What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Streckbine, joined always by my main man, Jacob Punturi. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers played football over the weekend, and it was awesome to see. Start to finish, this team had some exciting notes and takeaways to dive into. They walk away from Jacksonville 31-25 winners over the Jaguars, and we've got Roman Wilson, we've got Broderick Jones, we've got Skylar Thompson, a trio of undrafted guys, some backups on defense. Everybody impressed in one way or another, and well, some I guess didn't, but we'll dive into those as well. It was an exciting one. It was good to just have some football, to be really honest. And shout out to whoever the kicker is in Jacksonville, because the NFL should immediately amend the rule that preseason games don't count, and that guy should hold the record for the longest field goal in NFL history, because whether that was an exhibition or not, it was absolutely insane, jaw-dropping, and electrifying. And I'm excited to dive into everything with you. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like, Steelers football is back, so how
Yes.
can I be, complaining about anything else? I do believe that kicker's last name was Little, which
Little.
is the best last name ever, and I agree. I think kicking records should just include preseason exhibition games, because that was unbelievable. And the amount of excitement a 70-yard field goal brought me is probably not normal, but I was freaking out watching
Yeah.
that. I was like, this might be the greatest Saturday of my life right now.
I agree. I was sitting there. It was the only moment of the whole game where I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing? And it was crazy.
Mhm.
70-yard field. That's just lunacy. I bet you the Steelers went into halftime also like, all right, dude, let's just take a quick moment. Everybody get it out. Everybody get the excitement out. Let it go. And then we'll game plan for the second half. But that was pretty crazy, and we have to acknowledge it. Shout out to Little. I thought it was, are we sure it's not? Is it Loop? Is it Little? Jaguars
I'll
kicker.
check.
The 70-yard field goal. It's the first thing that comes up here. It's Little, man. What a name. Cam Little. What a name for a kicker, dude, with a big leg. Little with the big leg. Shout out. Let's dive into some Pittsburgh Steelers football here. Let's start with the first team guys that went in there and the takeaways from there. There were a lot of questions going into this game. Roman Wilson, the starting offensive line, more specifically Broderick Jones. How do the rest of the offense look? How does the rest of the offense look compared to the Jaguars starters, who they all played pretty much the same amount of snaps, about a series or two before they were removed? And you watched it and you came into the game. I mean, to me, I made it very public. I thought the Steelers were going to lose. I was texting my buddies beforehand. They were going, hey, what are the bets tonight? I said, Jags all day. And well, I got a text at the end of the night that said, hey, no, you might as well have just texted me, hey, you want to send me $50, because that's what just happened. The Steelers first team looked real impressive. Mason Rudolph led a beautiful drive that ended with the Darnell Washington touchdown. Roman Wilson catches the first two passes of the game, which I thought was so significant to say, here it is. Roman is technically wide receiver one in this game. What does he do? Can he answer the call? I thought he did. And I thought Darnell Washington just put a cherry on top of what was so exciting to watch for a moment there, because you just went, what is Darnell? What can he actually do? Well, he was pretty wide open, and to be 315 pounds and 6'7", getting wide open is, that wide open is not an easy task. He was able to do it all while the offensive line looked, is anything less than fantastic a word in pass blocking? Obviously, the run, and we'll dive into that here shortly, wasn't the best, but the pass blocking, the Broderick Jones, there was one sack, and it was against Spencer Anderson, and it was a play where Mason Rudolph had 4 years to throw the football, so it's not on the offensive line. Your overall thoughts on just the first team, the first two series of this game, and what it kind of told you about the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I gotta say, I went into this game, being critical of a lot of the first team and asking a lot of the same questions that I thought you were as well.
Yep.
But, I'm happy to sit here and say that, they answered a ton of my questions. I'm not cementing anything. I'm not going to take away some of my criticisms of players like Broderick Jones or anything like that. But I mean, let's call it like we see it. That offensive line performed fantastically in that first series. I thought Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu specifically on the tackle
Yes.
positions looked excellent. And again, gave Mason Rudolph plenty of time to find open receivers, plenty of
Yes.
time to go through his progression and reads. And what more can you ask for? The Jaguars were really going out there. They were throwing pretty much the entire starting unit out there on both sides of the ball. And Broderick Jones responded admirably. And Roman Wilson, another player that I have been very critical of vocally here, he was excellent. That
Yeah.
19-yard grab, incredible. He goes up the ladder, he's beating his man, he's showing off some sure hands. It was exactly what you wanted to see in a preseason game. It was exactly the type of performance you wanted to see. It wasn't, riddling the stat sheet with all of these massive plays or anything, but you had these questions. You wanted to know, can these players respond, show a little bit more than they have in training camp the past week and a half? And they absolutely did. So first team, I have to give props to, have to applaud Broderick Jones and Roman Wilson specifically, especially after all of the crap that I've been talking on this podcast.
No, I'm the same way. The worries of Broderick Jones were so real, and even the good days at training camp practice. People were, oh, Broderick Jones is starting to turn around. I'm like, yeah, dude, who cares? It's 2 days at the end of camp. Nobody cares anymore. Like at this point, you're watching Keyshawn Williams and Scotty Miller, not Broderick Jones. That's not where your mind is. Well, I was wrong because Broderick did look great in this, and that's against a defense that is not the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Roman's the same way. Did it, in your mind at all, close the door on conversations about how to replace the two?
A little bit. I
Okay.
can't, the door's not swung shut, the door's not locked per
Yeah.
se, but yeah, I mean, again, what I wanted to see out of Broderick Jones was just a response that felt proportional to sort of the beating he's been taking in training
Yes.
camp. And for him to do that is tells me that he has the resiliency that I've sort of been doubting. It tells me that he sort of has the mental fortitude and he's taking the next step. And that was one of the things we've talked about wanting to see out of Broderick Jones,
Yes, sir.
and to fully establish himself as a starter. So, yeah, I thought that was a very promising effort. I thought that that took a huge step, not locking the door on him, but I think that I've seen plenty from, just that first series, those first 10, 11 plays from him to feel a little bit more confident. Roman Wilson as well. I'm more confident about Broderick Jones after this game than Roman Wilson, but
Yeah.
I think Roman Wilson has a lot more runway to prove it over the next couple of weeks as well. So I'm not, I don't want to say come off as critical as both of them because I think they had outstanding games in both respects. But yeah, I'm not fully closing the door on replacing them, but I think we have maybe started to convince me that it might not be a necessity right now.
I agree. Wholeheartedly, I agree. I was talking to people last night when the Tyreek Hill news of like teams are monitoring a trade um, came out, and everybody was like, "Do you think the Steelers can do it?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man," because Roman definitely created a gap for himself, gave him a little bit of leeway to say, all right, well, you at least have another week. You suck in Tampa, there's a different conversation. But
Mhm.
right now, you gave yourself a week to say, what can he do next? Can he progress in this? Will he play? And that's my expectation, is that Roman plays even more in the second preseason game to see what he can do. Broderick, I don't feel the same way. Broderick, I think, said it was a statement game. It was and it didn't need to be much. The statement was not hey, I just beat TJ Watt for 4 quarters. I'm the best in the league. That's not what it was. It was look at guys, let's end the conversation for a little while. Let's stop talking about me for just a couple of days and see what happens. And I think that Broderick did that. Roman still got some to prove, but I mean, the Andrus Pete that we talked about for 2 days of like, can he become that guy? I don't think the Steelers, Mike Tomlin didn't know his name when he showed up. He doesn't have any idea what it is now. Broderick just eliminated his name completely from Mike Tomlin's vocabulary. And I think that's great to see. Roman, on the other hand, I think he gave him a week. It was a strong week. It was a strong game. Gives him some leeway, like you said, to see where he can go from here. Let's talk quarterbacks next. We'll talk wide receivers here in a moment because Scotty Miller looked great, and I want to end the show by talking wide receivers because I think it's a good time to predict who's staying. What guys are going to make this roster because there's a conversation to have after Saturday night. Let's talk our quarterback. Mason Rudolph goes out there. He looks great outside of a sack that was definitely on him. there's no conversation about what's to come, you know, and I'm okay with the sack. Like if your backup quarterback's getting sacked because, you know, he held on to the ball too long instead of throwing intercept. If that's the negative, is a first down sack is the bad takeaway on Mason Rudolph, I'm fine. You know what I mean? There are way worse. Cooper Rush and the Baltimore Ravens started their preseason with an interception. Okay. It could be worse. It could be way worse. Skylar Thompson, though. Skylar Thompson finishes the game 20-28, 233 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I mean, coming into it, the conversation was he has so much to prove to beat Will Howard, who isn't even going to play. But the door opened for the first time for Skylar Thompson with the Will Howard injury, to have an opportunity. Before the injury, Skylar Thompson's on the outside looking in, and he's not going to climb his way in. He's just firmly placed as quarterback 4. Injury happens. The conversation starts to happen of, well, you know, what can he do? How good does he have to look to make and earn that QB3 spot? This might be a hot take right off the bat here. In my eyes, Skylar Thompson is QB3 for the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into week 1, and he's got to now lose that job instead of earn it, because you throw 3 touchdowns at 233 yards and look as good as he did throughout pretty much the whole game with an atrocious running game and an absolutely abysmal backup offensive line. I mean, those guys, I don't know who 71 is off the top of my head, but I could still picture him getting thrown 3 yards back into Caleb Johnson. And I was going, that's a backup defender that just did that to you. What, that guy doesn't have a job tomorrow. What are you doing? An abysmal offensive line, a bunch of rookie wide receivers, still looks as good as he did. In my eyes, Skylar Thompson said, this is your excuse to keep Will on the PUP list or IR throughout the whole season. And things could change, obviously, but leaving week 1, I think now it's Skylar Thompson's job to lose. Your thoughts on Skylar, and if I am just way off base here with this hot take?
Well, I'll classify it as a hot take for sure. I think the QB3 position is 100% dependent on the health of Will Howard. If he is 100% healthy, I assume he will be the QB3 going into week 1, but you know, that's the big question. Where I agree with you 100% is Skylar Thompson had one heck of a performance and put himself to be, you know, earning another contract, whether it's within, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers or outside of the organization. I'm not sure. I just want to say, when I went up to OTAs, I remember talking to you about it, I think on this show, and I was like, I know he's not going to make the team, but Skylar Thompson does some really impressive things with the football. And for him to, you know, it was all the same things. He's mobile, he's quick. You know, when I was part of the people that the group that talked to him on, was it Wednesday or Thursday last week, whenever the Will Howard injury was announced, he had this confidence that honestly kind of took me aback. I was like, that's a lot of confidence for QB4 coming in here. But whenever he puts on a performance like that he did against Jacksonville, with not a very strong offensive line in front of him, you know, there was some penalties called there. You know, the only time I saw Dylan Cook's name was on a holding penalty against the Jaguars. And so, you know, it wasn't a ton of promising stuff around him besides the wide receivers that we'll get into in a minute. But Skylar Thompson made plays. And I think if Will Howard hasn't been so promising in training camp, if he hasn't generated excitement by his own performance and merit, I'm probably agreeing with you 100%. But, you know, I think Will Howard factor is too loud. It's too great for Skylar Thompson to really outplay him, to displace him from that QB3 position. But man, I think Skylar Thompson deserves his roses, deserves his flowers for putting on one heck of a preseason performance.
For sure. And the Steelers want Will Howard to be that guy. You know what I mean? And everybody should want Will Howard to be that guy. Will Howard he's a 6th round rookie, but he's still a rookie. He's got a promising future. Even if it's not as a starter, you want a guy here that in a year, Skylar Thompson's never going to become the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Will Howard most likely isn't going to become the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there's a significant gap between Will Howard's opportunity to eventually be a starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Skylar Thompson's. You know, there's the things that would have to go wrong for Skylar Thompson to lead the Pittsburgh Steelers at any point in his career. It would be crazy. Will Howard, it's not that, you know, you draft a rookie in the 1st round next year, Aaron Rodgers retires, Mason leaves, and the 1st round rookie doesn't look that good. Will Howard's your starting quarterback, you know? I hear you on that one. Do you think that do you have confidence? I mean, you're the guy that said this in OTA, so you're the one to ask here. Do you have confidence that he could do it again and climb his way into that third? I mean, again, like Friday night or Friday morning, the conversation is not, can Skylar Thompson earn a roster spot? You know, now that conversation's here. Do you have a confidence level? What is that confidence level that he could actually pull it off?
Oh, my confidence in Skylar Thompson is probably absurdly high, but I mean, I love quarterbacks who are mobile. I love quarterbacks who are unafraid to, move outside of the pocket to
Yeah.
finish play. I don't think he bails out of the pocket early, like we talked, I'm sure you talked about with like Kenny Pickett a bunch, like there's some quarterbacks who will bail out of the pocket very early. Skylar Thompson's not one of them. He can take a hit if he needs to, but he does a lot of things really well. So I have a lot of confidence that he is tailored to preseason football.
Yeah.
That might sound like a backhanded compliment, but I think
No.
he's not a starter, but he
No.
is very talented. So whenever he gets to showcase that for 3 quarters against second and third string talent, it really shows up. It really comes on display. So yeah, I think the next 2 games, we're going to see a lot of Skylar Thompson again. And I think we're going to be having a lot of conversations again about, wow, he's very impressive in these preseason contests. Is there a real competition? Again, I think my answer ultimately is no. I don't think he can play himself into the 53-man roster unless there is an injury issue still, but I don't think that takes away from just how impressive he continues to be and look in training camp and now this first preseason game.
I'm telling you, if he could do this one more time, 2 more times, he's got to have to do it twice. He throws Skylar Thompson right now is the Cheddar Bob from a couple of years ago. Matthew, what is his name? Forget his name. Everybody called him Cheddar Bob. That was his nickname, Cheddar Bob. He's that guy. He's the dude who everybody's excited about, and people aren't excited. Nobody's excited about Skylar Thompson. There's nobody in this fan base that's like, man, I'm rooting so hard for Skylar Thompson to beat out Will Howard. Like that would make my whole preseason. It wouldn't. It would make everybody miserable. But right now, he's the guy where there's a lot of momentum there. Mike Tomlin and company are going to give him an opportunity, but he's got to be perfect in that opportunity. He can't, you throw 1 interception, you're gone. You're a practice squatter. You know what I mean? But if you are flawless for the next 2 weeks, which I mean, people forget, Skylar Thompson, he's got more close playoff games than Mike Tomlin does in the last 7 years. Okay.
It's true.
It's true. He's a 1 touchdown game away from a divisional round game that the Steelers haven't even sniffed in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time. If he could do it, we'll see what happens. Let's talk wide receivers. Okay.
Matthew Sexton was the
Matthew Sexton, Cheddar Bob. Matthew Sexton, man, he was a stud, dude. He was the original little white wide receiver that I was like, that everybody was like, this guy's got to make the team, man. I don't care how you do it, but this guy's got to make the team. Now the Steelers roster is like 90% undersized wide receivers, and they're not as good as Matthew Sexton, but we're excited about it. Let's talk. And when it comes to Kenny Pickett, for anybody who doesn't remember the radio guy, I think his name was, who came to a Mike Tomlin press conference and made everybody's jaw drop by going, hey, Mike, what are you doing with the offensive line? Because Kenny Pickett's getting his ass kicked. And Mike Tomlin looked at him and we all just went, oh my, what just came out of your mouth when the week before Kenny Pickett ran himself into like 5. The next question was from, I'm not going to say a name because it came off a little, you know what I mean? It was definitely condescending. Was, hey, Mike, how much is Kenny running himself into sacks? And Mike was like, yeah, quite a bit, actually, all the time. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's a wild time. Shout out Kenny Pickett. Shedeur Sanders, man. About to make Kenny Pickett a Cincinnati Bengal, maybe. Just making his way through the AFC North.
The Shedynasty is here.
The Shedynasty. Shedam. Let's talk wide receivers. Max Hurlman, who we've talked about so much on the show. Keyshawn Williams, who we've talked about so much on this show. Rock Taylor, who we've talked about so much on this show. And then even Scotty Miller, who we've talked about more than any of them on this show, all showed out in Jacksonville. Scotty Miller finishes with 4 receptions for 47 yards. He went back-to-back, nearly back receptions in the third quarter drive, all up the middle, took hits on 2 of them, beautiful times. And then Keyshawn Williams goes 2 for 55 and a touchdown, including an absolutely gorgeous 50-50 ball that he ripped from a defender's hands in the end zone. When you're 5'10", 185 pounds, you shouldn't be able to do that. He did it, and it was awesome to watch. Max Hurlman goes 2 for 29 and a touchdown, wide open on his touchdown, which is that's just been a theme for Max Hurlman, is him just being so elusive in his routes that nobody could stop him. And the backflip was just a cherry on top. And then Rock Taylor, in a moment where you were going, all right, that's 2 for 2. Where's the third? Where's Rock? What's Rock going to do? 2 for 38 yards, and you're feeling real good about it. How impressed were you with these rookie? I mean, Scotty's a different conversation. We'll talk about who makes the roster here in a minute, but the trio of undrafted guys who have caught our attention all summer, but then were able to put it on display in Jacksonville. What were your thoughts there?
I was impressed. And, you and I think, have been pumping the brakes on getting too excited about certain things in the training camp and preseason process, but it's genuinely very hard for me right now to not get overexcited about Keyshawn Williams, about Rock Taylor, about, even Lance McCutcheon made a couple of nice catches. Max Hurlman's speed was on display, and I think I was most impressed by that 50-50 ball from Keyshawn Williams.
Yes.
Of course, I mean, talk about undersized wide receivers, like he has that dogged determination that was on display during this game that I'm sure the coaching staff is just loving and wants to see more out of. And I'm excited to go up to Latrobe and see what's going on today in response to this. I'm excited to see the next game against Tampa Bay. I'm really trying hard to temper my own expectations, but even on that Max Hurlman touchdown, they audibled at the line of scrimmage, and you could tell that he was like not trying to get the play and make sure he had the call right. As soon as the ball was snapped, he was even like a split second behind what was going on, but he's so athletic and has such burst that the corner that was guarding him, or safety, whoever it was, had no chance. And he was able to secure the touchdown and then do a backflip, which I could only hope to do one day. So yeah, I mean, Noah, again, I'm trying my best not to get too excited. Again, take it with a grain of salt because of the competition that they were playing against most of the game. But for a team that is starved for rising wide receiver talent outside of DK Metcalf, to see several names, undrafted players at that step up and have really strong performances it's kind of exactly what the doctor ordered. We've been asking for someone to look impressive that we have not been talking about as much, or someone who the pressure is not ratcheted up to 10 on, like Aaron Rodgers and Roman Wilson and DK Metcalf, etc. And these three guys come out and they have a heck of a game. So I don't know. I'm excited, man, and I'm trying not to buy in too much to this.
Dude, I'm bought in. If we're gonna be honest, I'm bought. I'm not bought in that they're gonna make the roster, but I'm bought in that they are talented wide receivers. And while everybody loves Rock, and I think Rock's a very talented guy, Keyshawn Williams and Max Hurlman's the most talented of the three. It is nearly impossible to deny how good this guy's been at it's every day that there's a fan behind you standing on the field going, damn, who's 34? Every day, every single day it happens. That's how impressive this guy has been on a consistent basis. Keyshawn Williams is the most overlooked guy from start to finish of training camp. He's caught passes every day where you're going, that was a good pass by 85. And you're just not even paying attention to it. And then Rock Taylor, obviously everybody wants him to succeed. I would love for him to succeed. And he's just out here making plays. I'm bought into how good they could be. I'm not saying that they're superstar wide receivers. I'm saying that this is a great batch of undrafted wide receivers for the Steelers that could potentially make impacts and find their way, at least one of them, onto the 53-man roster, which leads us to the big question here. Roman Wilson, wide receiver 3. DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, Ben Skoronek's a lock because of his special teams. You got to think Scotty Miller's on there, maybe, but I'll ask the question. I'll leave it open-ended here. You got 4 right now. Do you keep 6? Do you keep 5? And who are they? Who gets the final 2 roster spots for the Pittsburgh Steelers after this one?
Wow. I mean, that is seriously, I think, one of the toughest roster questions to debate right now. It's hard for me to leave Scotty Miller off of this 53-man roster right now. And
Agreed.
I would love, I think just off of my preference, I would prefer a younger guy. I would prefer Keyshawn Williams on this team.
Yeah.
But I think Scotty Miller, I agree with you 100% about Skoranek. He's a lock. The top
Yeah.
4 are locks. I think Scotty Miller's veteran leadership, and talk about consistently performing well. He is someone who has stood out since OTAs, beginning of training camp, leads the team in receptions against Jacksonville. How can you make an argument that he's not doing enough to warrant a roster spot, even
Yes.
as there is so much talent kind of coming out? So many people are having these coming out parties over the past few days. I think I'm going with 5 receivers.
Okay.
And I think Scotty Miller's the 5th, but here is my one scenario where I could see them going with 6 wide receivers, and I think that 6th one would be right now Keyshawn Williams.
Love it.
I think that would happen if they only kept 3 tight ends. And
Oh,
I don't know if they're going to do that,
yeah,
because
yeah.
then we're having this whole conversation about, like, does Connor Hayward fit? And he brings a lot in different situations as well. And he didn't look terrible either whenever he gets the ball his way.
No.
So yeah, I think we're gonna have 5 wide receivers, and I think we're gonna be maybe surprised, slightly disappointed when that final 53-man roster comes out, and we're kind of hoping that someone like a Rock Taylor or Keyshawn Williams and Max Hurlman, too, unfortunately, are able to stick around and be members of the practice squad, and hope that the rest of the NFL isn't taking enough notice of what's going on in Pittsburgh right now, and they can kind of stay under the radar and stay within the Steelers organization.
I agree. I agree. I hope that the Steelers that have a plan to keep at least 2 of them. You know what I mean? You're hoping 3, but at least 2 of them on the practice squad. I tried to go through the numbers yesterday of like, well, let's do the math. Let's get everybody here. If you keep 4 tight ends, you keep 5 inside or 4 inside linebackers, you get rid of Carson Bruner, and you only keep 6 corners, which means that like Corey Trice might not make the roster. Although Beanie Bishop, half the fan base said Beanie Bishop looked great. Half the fan base said Beanie Bishop looked terrible. I didn't think Beanie Bishop looked good at all. Yeah.
I was very split on him on Saturday.
The 2 plays that everybody wants to point out are plays that he got beat real bad on. And the guy just dropped the football. Or it was a terrible pass. So it depends on how they go there. If they do that, I think it opens the door for 6. And if they keep 6, this might be crazy, but I think Max Hurlman is the guy. I think Max Hurlman would make I think Scotty Miller's on. Robert Woods is the sneaky, like, I don't think he's going to make the roster. He's just not doing anything right now. He drops a lot of footballs in training camp. Like, it's just, to me, like a veteran guy, but what's he add? Nothing. Take a shot on a younger guy. To me, Max Hurlman gets the reps before those 2, which is an indicator in my eyes, and just a lot more notice at training camp that he was able to put into Jacksonville and just say like, hey, I could actually do this in a game too. Mike Tomlin's a massive fan of this kid. So I would guess that, but I agree with you. Like, I think it's really difficult to convince them. I think Keyshawn Williams is a lock for the practice squad. Like, if he doesn't end up somewhere else, the Steelers have to bring him back. And then Rock Taylor, you hope, but I'm just excited for any of them, and I think that if they do keep 6, Max would be Keyshawn's a strong 2 who could quickly convince them otherwise, but those 2 are neck and neck in my eyes in a competition.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even disagree with the Max Hurlman stuff. I mean, it is just from the fan base, whether it's different people on the beat, people who are covering the team, like
yes,
there is a unanimous sort of a consensus idea that Max Hurlman is one of the most underrated players to come into the Steelers training camp this year. I mean, so yeah, I won't be shocked. I won't be surprised if his star continues to rise and he ends up finding his way onto the 53-man roster. I'm not predicting it right now, but boy, oh boy, I won't be shocked if it happens.
No, it's exciting stuff. The undrafted wide receivers are the best position to watch, and the Steelers have some good ones, and I'm super excited for it. All right. With that said, guys, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We didn't go live this morning, so we could go live this afternoon post training camp. We're headed to, Latrobe right now. We'll be going live on the channel later today to break down what is the second last day of training camp at St. Vincent College. Some sad times, but we're excited for it. With that said, everybody enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.